Why was everyone pretending she didn't exist when she stepped into the briefing hall? Elise could feel the shift in the air the moment she crossed the threshold. A subtle tightening. A silence that wasn't silence. The kind born from glances quickly exchanged, and judgments quietly passed. She had felt this before, in different bases, different wars, different lives. But something about this room felt heavier, as if someone had already decided who she was before she even opened her mouth. She set her files on the cold metal table. They made a sharp clack, but nobody looked up. Not the lieutenant scrolling on his tablet. Not the two sergeants whispering like she wasn't 5 feet away. Not even the colonel at the far end of the table, the same man whose voice she still remembered echoing across the parade ground earlier that morning. The man who once told her she wasn't fit for combat. The same man who had frozen when she reminded him of Fallujah. He saw her now. She felt his eyes, but he said nothing. And maybe that hurt more than any insult. She pulled out a chair slowly, the scrape of metal across the floor making a few heads jerk in irritation. Still, no one welcomed her. No nods. No acknowledgement. She wanted to laugh at the irony. A woman who had dragged half a platoon out of a burning street was now being ignored like she was invisible. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. The colonel cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss Operation Hollow Ridge," he said, voice crisp, authoritative, pretending he wasn't aware of her presence. "Hostile pockets remain in the northern sector. We need eyes in the hills and stabilization along the approach route." Maps flickered onto the screen. Drone footage looped above the table, broken roads, collapsed houses, empty rooftops, all quiet in that unsettling way battlefields become quiet when danger is studying you back. One sergeant raised a hand. "Sir, who's leading medical and extraction for this?" The colonel exhaled. His eyes flickered toward Elise for half a second, then away again. "Command has assigned Captain Elise Warren." Faces shifted. Some expected that answer, others didn't like it. But no one asked why she was there. No one asked what she had survived. No one asked what she knew about Hollow Ridge that they didn't. She leaned back slightly, letting the silence stretch until it began to sting. "Is there a problem with that?" she asked quietly. The lieutenant spoke first. "Ma'am, with respect, Hollow Ridge isn't a place for medics. We need fighters. We need people who can actually handle." She cut him off gently. "I've handled Hollow Ridge before." The entire room paused. It was the kind of pause that could swallow someone's confidence whole, unless the person speaking had already had her confidence stripped away long ago. The colonel's brows rose. "You've been there." She nodded once, 10 years ago, before it became the nightmare it is now. A ripple moved through the room. Questions formed. But she kept her expression calm, neutral, giving nothing. "It was classified," she added softly. "A mission most people pretend never happened." The colonel leaned forward, gaze sharpening. "Why wasn't I informed of this in your transfer file?" She could have told him the truth. That someone had buried it. That someone wanted her forgotten. That someone had labeled her not fit for reasons that had nothing to do with ability and everything to do with politics. But she simply said, because command didn't think it mattered anymore. The colonel swallowed once, a rare flash of uncertainty cracking through his stiff composure. "Well, it matters now." He gestured toward the drone footage. "What did you see there? What do you remember?" Elise stared at the looping video. It wasn't the hills she remembered. It was the silence inside them. The silence before an ambush. The silence of homes turned to graves. The silence that took 3 days to climb out of her chest after the mission ended. But the room didn't need those details yet. "They wait until you think it's safe," she murmured. "Then they move." "Who they?" the lieutenant asked impatiently. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You'll know when you meet them." There was a beat of confusion. The colonel shut off the projector, the room dimming into a somber half-light. "We deploy in 48 hours," he announced. Warren will lead medical support and auxiliary recon. If anyone has concerns, his eyes lingered on two officers who'd been whispering earlier. They can take them up with me. No one spoke. No one dared. The briefing ended. Chairs scraped the floor. Boots shuffled out. Voices swelled again, careful to avoid her. Elise stayed seated, staring at the table, wishing just once she could enter a room and not feel like she had to apologize for existing. She waited until everyone else had gone before she finally stood. The colonel remained behind. He approached slowly, stopping a few feet away as if unsure how close he was allowed to be. "You caught me off guard today," he admitted. "That doesn't happen often." She gave a faint smile. "I'm aware." His gaze lowered in thought. "Fallujah, Hollow Ridge, you've been carrying more than I realized." She didn't respond. Pain doesn't vanish just because someone finally notices it. "You ever wonder why Command keeps sending you to places like this?" he asked, tone softer now. "All the time," she murmured. But not for the reason he thought. She wondered because Hollow Ridge was the kind of mission you didn't return from unchanged. She wondered because she'd been running from something for 10 years, the memory of someone she lost in those hills, someone she failed to save, someone she had never forgiven herself for leaving behind. But she wasn't ready to tell him that. "Not yet. If you have insight about Hollow Ridge," he said, "I need it before we deploy." "You'll have it," she promised. Then she hesitated, eyes distant. "But some things need to be said at the right time." He nodded slowly, understood. She picked up her files and walked out of the room, her boots echoing in the empty hallway. Step after step, her heartbeat matched the rhythm, steady, restrained, carrying an old weight no one else could see. Outside, the afternoon sun hit her face, bright and unforgiving. Soldiers passed by, chatting, laughing, shouldering rifles with easy confidence. She watched them for a moment, wondering if any of them knew how delicate life could be when the wrong decision was made in the wrong valley. She pulled out her dog tags, rubbing her thumb across the engraved letters. The metal was warm from her skin, familiar, anchoring, but the second tag, the one she wore behind it, was colder. It didn't have her name on it. It never had. She tucked it back beneath her uniform. Then she took a long breath and whispered to herself, "This time, no mistakes." But deep down, she knew something Hollow Ridge had taught her long ago. Some mistakes don't stay buried. Some follow you back. Some wait. Sometimes they're waiting for you. And as the wind shifted, carrying a faint, familiar scent that made her freeze, Elise realized something she hadn't thought about in years. Someone out there might already know she was coming. What made her stop in the middle of the hallway, breath snagging in her chest like a wire pulled tight? Elise couldn't explain it at first, just a sensation, subtle but unmistakable, like someone brushing a finger across the back of her mind. A memory disguised as a warning. A presence she hadn't felt since Hollow Ridge swallowed her team whole 10 years ago. She turned slowly, scanning the corridor. Nothing. Just soldiers passing through, carrying paperwork, gear, coffee, conversations. Normal noise, normal chaos, normal life. Yet her pulse didn't settle. Because she knew what she felt wasn't normal at all. Someone had been watching her. Someone who recognized her. And someone who shouldn't still be alive. She tried to dismiss it, tried to breathe through it, but the weight didn't leave her chest. It pressed deeper, sinking into places she'd buried beneath duty, discipline, and the armor she wore in silence. She walked toward the exit, each step steady but not relaxed. Her hand brushed the edge of her pocket where a folded photo lay hidden, the last picture her team took before the Hollow Ridge mission went to hell. 7 faces, 6 survivors, and one she'd never forgiven herself for losing. The one whose dog tag she still carried. She stepped outside into the open air. The sky lit the compound in soft gold, the late-day sun stretching long shadows across the concrete. It should have been calming. But it was. Not today. She felt eyes again, not on her back this time, but on her past. She headed toward the training field, trying to shake off the sensation. Soldiers were running drills, shouting cadence, sweat glistening under the fading light. She moved past them, unnoticed, the way she preferred. Being seen always carried its own risks. "Captain Warren." She stopped, the voice was young, nervous. A private jogged up, helmet crooked, breath uneven. "Ma'am, the colonel asked me to let you know there's a prep meeting at 1900. Situation updates. You're expected." She nodded, "Thank you." He hesitated. "Ma'am, earlier today at the parade ground, that story about Fallujah, that was real." She studied him, his wide-eyed curiosity, the innocence that war hadn't yet stripped from him. "Yes, it was real." He swallowed. "Is that why you're going to Hollow Ridge?" Her jaw tightened. "No," she said quietly. "I'm going because no one else should repeat what we went through." He nodded slowly, as if unsure what pain hid beneath those words. Then he left. Elise continued walking, the wind tugging faintly at her sleeves, carrying smells of dust, oil, steel, sweat. A familiar blend that had once felt like home. Now it felt like a threshold. Her mind drifted. Hollow Ridge. The ambush. The screaming. The smoke. The moment she realized one of her teammates was missing. The moment the ridge went silent. The moment she made the worst decision of her career, or the best, depending on who you asked. She closed her eyes, pressing fingertips against her temple as memory scraped raw through the years. She could still hear the last words spoken through her comms before the signal cut out. "Elise, don't come back for me." But she had. She had come back. And she had found nothing. She shook her head, grounding herself, forcing the memory back into its cage. Emotion wasn't useful before deployment. Emotion got people killed. Still, her heart carried a bruise that never faded. A voice behind her snapped her from the spiral. "You spacing out on me already." She turned. Sergeant Mara Hensley stood there, tall, sharp, confident. A woman with a stance that said she trusted almost no one but didn't need to. Her rifle hung across her shoulder like an extension of her spine. Mara was part of the new task force assigned to Hollow Ridge. Rumor said she had transferred from Special Recon, though Elise suspected there was more to it. "You look like you saw a ghost," Mara said, eyes narrowing slightly. Elise forced a faint smile, "Just thinking." "Dangerous habit," Mara replied. Then she stepped closer. "Look, I know people have been weird around you today. All part of the job." "Not like this." Mara crossed her arms. "Word spread fast about what you said to the colonel earlier. Half the base thinks you're some kind of legend now." "Legends are just mistakes told nicely," Elise murmured. Mara smirked. "Maybe, but you shook him. That doesn't happen." Elise shrugged it off. She didn't care about shaking anyone. She cared about what lay in those hills, the kind of threat no amount of rank could prepare you for. "You ever been to Hollow Ridge?" Elise asked. Mara's expression shifted, closing, guarding. "No, but I've heard enough." "Then you haven't heard anything at all," Elise whispered. Mara's eyes flicked with uncertainty, but Elise didn't elaborate. She wasn't ready to open that door. Not yet. Not until she understood why that familiar sensation earlier felt like a shadow brushing past her thoughts. A shadow with a name. Mara changed the subject. "We've got the recon drones calibrated. I want your eyes on the feed later." "All right." "And just so you know," Mara added in a lower tone, "whatever happened back then, you don't need to handle this alone." Elise looked at her. The sincerity in Mara's eyes was real, rare, dangerous. Those were the people you lost first in places like Hollow Ridge. "I appreciate it," she said gently, "but some things were never meant to be shared." Mara nodded once, no argument. See you at the meeting." After she left, Elise walked toward the far edge of the field where a quiet bench sat under a dying orange sky. She sat, elbows on knees, watching the sun sink into the horizon. The light hit the hills beyond the base, painting them in golden fire. Hollow Ridge looked peaceful from a distance. It was always peaceful from a distance. Her mind drifted again to the last night before the mission years ago, when her team had huddled around a small lantern, joking, bantering, unaware that dawn would turn half of them into memories. She remembered the way he had smiled at her, calm, soft, steady, the smile of someone who didn't fear death because he had already made peace with it. "Don't blame yourself," he had told her quietly. "If anything happens, it's not on you." She had shoved his shoulder, pretending not to take it seriously, pretending the world wasn't about to split open. But she remembered those words now, because they were the last ones he spoke to her. The wind picked up again and the scent hit her, faint, distant, unmistakable, burning cedar, the same smell that hung in the air the night Hollow Ridge burned. Her entire body went still. Someone was out there. Someone who knew the scent. Someone who had survived where he hadn't. Her chest tightened. She whispered to the wind, "How are you still haunting me after all these years?" Her voice trembled just once. She rubbed the second dog tag between her fingers. The engraved letters caught the fading light, sharp and cold. Before she could sink deeper into the memory, a loudspeaker crackled. "All personnel, evening meeting in 15 minutes. Repeat, 15 minutes." She stood. But as she turned toward the main building, she felt that sensation again, a presence brushing against her awareness like a breath on the back of her neck. Only this time, it came with a chilling certainty. Someone from Hollow Ridge wasn't gone. Someone was watching her. And someone wanted her to come back. Why did the briefing room feel colder the moment she stepped inside? Elise noticed it instantly, not the temperature itself, but the atmosphere. Conversations quieted. Eyes tracked her. Even those who tried not to stare failed. It wasn't hostility this time. It was something worse. Expectation. She walked to the table, her footsteps measured, heart steady but edged with something sharp beneath it. Mara was already seated, hands folded, gaze focused on the folder in front of her. Across the table, the colonel stood at a wall map, marking coordinates with a red pen. He looked up briefly as Elise entered, not dismissive anymore, not arrogant but searching. As if he expected her to explain something she hadn't told him yet. She didn't. Not now. Not while that strange, unsettling presence still pressed at the back of her mind like a message carried on the wind. "Glad everyone's here," the colonel said, clearing his throat. Elise took her seat. The lights dimmed. A projector blinked on, displaying satellite images of Hollow Ridge, the same hills she remembered, only now they looked older, angrier, stripped of the life they once held. Jagged terrain, narrow passes, shadows thick enough to hide a squad. Or a ghost. The colonel began. 48 hours ago, drone reconnaissance detected movement in the abandoned northern settlements. He clicked. Grainy footage appeared, rooftops, doorways, figures slipping in and out like spirits. "We believe the area to be deserted, but clearly it's not." A murmur spread around the table. Myra leaned forward. "Do we know who they belong to? Local militia, remnants?" "No flags, no markings," the colonel said. "But they're trained, coordinated." Elise felt her stomach tighten. Of course they were trained. Of course they were coordinated. The ones who ambushed her team 10 years ago were the same, silent, precise, unpredictable. They didn't move like militia. They moved like people who'd been taught to kill long before they ever touched a uniform. The colonel continued. "Our mission is to recon the ridge, locate their base, assess strength, and prepare for securement." Elise's jaw clenched. It sounded simple. Nothing about Hollow Ridge was simple. The lieutenant asked, What's the terrain like now? Any recent changes? The colonel turned to Elise, and every head in the room followed. She blinked, caught off guard. Why are you asking me? You were there before, he said. Your perspective matters. Any insights? All eyes were on her now, not dismissive, not mocking, but hopeful. As if she had answers they desperately needed, as if she had authority to guide them. She swallowed the knot in her throat. The terrain shifts with the weather. Landslides are common. Vegetation is dense on the west side, good for hiding movement. The eastern cliffs are unstable. If you're not careful, they crumble under you. A sergeant scribbled frantically. Another asked, ambush points. Elise exhaled slowly, everywhere. The room stilled. She continued, quieter, they don't fight where you expect. They fight where they've watched you for hours first. You won't hear them, you won't see them. They wait for you to think the ridge is empty, then they move. The colonel nodded grimly, just as you said earlier. Mara spoke next. You said you'd been there, but what exactly happened during that mission? The question wasn't accusatory, it was careful, cautious. Mara wasn't prying. She was trying to understand the weight in Elise's voice. Elise avoided her eyes. It was complicated. You lost people, Mara murmured. Elise nodded. How many? Elise hesitated, her vision blurring at the edges, not from tears but from memories sharpened by regret. Enough, she whispered. The colonel stepped in. We're not here to reopen old wounds. Too late. They had opened the moment she stepped foot back on base. He brought up a new image, a red-circled structure at the base of the ridge. This compound may be a command site. It wasn't here 10 years ago. It appeared recently. Elise stared at it. Her breath caught. That structure, metallic roof, reinforced walls, angular design, it wasn't built by militias. It wasn't something that just appeared. It looked like something government issued. She sat up straighter. That isn't a militia hideout. Everyone turned. That, she continued slowly, is an old forward operations post, military architecture, but it's been reconfigured. The colonel frowned. Reconfigured how? Elise tapped the image. The vent shafts, reinforced plates, that's not defensive, that's containment reinforcement. The room fell silent. Mara's eyebrows drew together. Containment for what? Elise's voice lowered. For someone. A chilling stillness settled across the table. The lieutenant finally broke the tension. You're saying whoever's in that place used to be one of us. Elise didn't answer. Because the truth was far more complicated. Far more dangerous. Far closer to her own nightmares. She finally said, that compound wasn't built during any operation I know of, and I know every mission in Hollow Ridge. She paused, swallowing. Someone built that after my team's ambush. Why? Mara asked softly. Elise stared at the image, her pulse echoing in her ears. She didn't want to say it. Not here, not until she was certain. But the suspicion had already formed. A suspicion that shook loose a buried truth she had fought to forget. What if someone from her team hadn't died? What if someone had been taken? Her throat tightened. She forced her voice steady. I don't know. Not yet. But she felt it. Like a whisper returning from the grave. The colonel broke the silence. We deploy at dawn. Warren, Hensley, your point for recon. Mara nodded. Elise's hands tightened around the edge of the table. Point. That meant she'd be the first to enter those hills. The first to feel that presence again. The first to confront whatever waited in the shadows of Hollow Ridge. The colonel added, dismissed. Chairs scraped, maps closed. The room emptied one by one until only Elise and Mara remained. Mara watched her carefully. You're holding something back. Elise didn't answer. Whatever happened back then, Mara continued gently, it's not going to repeat. Elise pressed her lips together, fighting the quake in her chest. "It already is," she whispered. Myra froze. Elise slowly rose from her chair. Her hands trembled, the first outward sign of anxiety she had shown since arriving. "I felt someone today, someone who shouldn't be here, someone I lost." Mara's eyes widened. "You think?" "I don't know what to think." Her voice broke slightly. "But I can feel it, something's wrong." "Then we'll face it." Elise closed her eyes. The problem wasn't fear of facing Hollow Ridge. The problem was what or who might be waiting for her inside it. She steadied herself, breathing through the storm inside her chest. This mission wasn't about recon anymore. It wasn't even about surviving. It was about answers. And answers always came with a price. She knew that better than anyone. What made the dawn feel heavier than any morning before it? Elise stood at the edge of the airstrip, the sky still bruised with early twilight, cold air clinging to her skin like a warning cloaked in mist. Helicopters idled in the distance, rotors slicing the air with a slow, rhythmic thrum, steady, powerful, familiar. Soldiers moved across the tarmac with practiced pace, checking gear, slinging rifles, loading crates, exchanging nods that carried adrenaline and fear in equal measure. But Elise felt detached from all of it, as if she were watching a mission she had already lived once. A mission that had already broken her. Mara approached from behind, boots crunching lightly against the gravel. "You ready?" she asked. Elise nodded, though the word meant nothing. Ready was a concept for people who still believed in beginning and end. Elise existed in the space in between, the place trauma carved and memory preserved. Mara studied her closely. "You didn't sleep." "Did you?" "Barely." A faint smile ghosted across Elise's lips. There was something grounding about Mara's honesty, something unpolished, something human. But it didn't erase the weight pressing on Elise's spine, the persistent whisper in her mind that someone was waiting. Someone she had once failed. The colonel strode toward them, map case in hand, voice firm. "Warren, Hensley, you're leading recon once we touch down. Drone support will track your movement. Stay within line of sight of the secondary team." Mara nodded. Elise didn't. Her eyes drifted toward the hills rising in the distance, half hidden by morning haze. Even from the airstrip, they looked the same as they had 10 years ago, jagged silhouettes, shadows pooling in their crevices, a quiet that was never just quiet. The colonel followed her gaze. "You don't have to go first," he said quietly, "if this is too much." "It's not," she cut in. He hesitated. "I meant what I said yesterday. You're carrying more than most soldiers ever will." "It's not weight," she whispered. "It's memory." He didn't argue. He knew there were some pains rank couldn't fix, some wounds command couldn't order healed. The rotors began spinning faster, sending the air across the tarmac into wild gusts that tugged at their uniforms. The colonel raised his voice. "Everyone load up." Mara tapped Elise's shoulder, guiding her toward the helicopter. "Let's go." Elise followed, boots heavy, heart heavier. She climbed inside, grabbed the overhead strap and braced herself as the engine roared. Soldiers filled the seats around her, young faces, determined faces, faces that didn't yet know what it meant to lose more than a mission. Across from her, Mara tightened the straps on her vest. "Once we land, we stick together," she said. "No splitting up, no hero moves." Elise's throat tightened. "Agreed." The helicopter lifted violently, wind blasting through the open side door. The base shrank below them, dissolving into patterns of concrete, barracks, and movement. Ahead, Hollow Ridge stretched like a scar across the landscape. Elise stared out at it, her fingers brushing against the second dog tag hidden beneath her uniform. She shouldn't have brought it. It would only anchor her to a past she needed to leave behind. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not when she still didn't know what happened to him. The flight was short, too short. The moment the helicopter descended onto the clearing at the ridge's base, Elise's breath stalled. The air changed. The same cold bite, the same distant silence, the same faint echo of something watching. She stepped out slowly, boots sinking into the soft dirt. The smell hit her first. Pine, cold stone, and something else faint, nearly forgotten. Burning cedar. Her knees nearly buckled. She steadied herself quickly before anyone noticed. Mara approached her side, scanning the hill with narrowed eyes. Looks abandoned. It always looks abandoned, Elise said softly. That's how it hides everything. The secondary team fanned out behind them. The colonel stepped off the helicopter last, surveying the area with cautious calculation. This is where we split. Recon team moves north along the ridge. Support team maintains position here and monitors movement. Call signs remain Alpha and Echo. Mara adjusted her rifle. Alpha copies. Elise's breath once deep, steady, controlled. Let's move. They began their ascent, the ground uneven, the slope growing steeper with each step. Branches snapped beneath their boots. Leaves rustled. Birds scattered. The morning light filtered through the canopy in fractured stripes, painting their path with shifting shadows. 10 minutes in, Mara slowed. Do you feel that? Elise didn't respond. Because yes, she felt it. The weight. The presence. The sense of something observing them from just beyond the tree line. She whispered, stay alert. Another 20 minutes. The ridge narrowed. Mara paused again. This terrain, it's all wrong. No, Elise murmured, it's the same. Mara turned to her, frowning. You sure? Yes. Because every rock, every dip in the earth, every twist of the path had carved itself into her memory during those 3 days of fire and panic and loss. They pushed forward. The air grew colder. And then movement. Elise stopped so suddenly, Mara nearly collided with her. What? Mara whispered, raising her rifle. Elise pointed. There at the edge of the clearing, half hidden behind a broken boulder. A metal fragment. Rectangular. Bent. Weathered. Elise's heart punched her ribs. A dog tag. Mara rushed forward, crouching beside it. She picked it up, turning it over. No name. Just a blank plate, tarnished by time and weather. Is this military issue? She asked. Elise didn't answer. She couldn't. Because 10 years ago, she had lost something just like it. Mara noticed the tremor in her hand. Elise, what is it? Her voice barely escaped. I think someone wants us to know they're here. Mara stared at her. You mean the enemy? Elise shook her head slowly. No, someone who knew me. The forest seemed to freeze. No wind. No birds. No sound. Just the ridge breathing around them like a living thing. A crackle came through their earpieces, the colonel's voice. Alpha status check. Mara pressed her comms. We found something. What kind of something? Mara hesitated, then looked at Elise, silently asking whether to tell him. Elise shook her head. Not yet. Just debris, Mara replied. Copy, proceed with caution. The comms clicked off. Elise stared at the dog tag in Mara's hand. Leave it. Why? Because it's a message. Mara swallowed. From who, Elise? From the only person she had never been able to bury. The only person whose body was never recovered. The only person whose last transmission was cut off mid-sentence. Her voice cracked as she whispered, someone who shouldn't be alive. Before Mara could respond, a sudden rustle erupted from the tree line. Leaves shook. Branches snapped. A shadow darted between the trunks, fast, silent, controlled. Mara raised her rifle instantly. Contact. Wait, Elise grabbed her arm. Don't fire. The shadow stopped. watching them, waiting, the same way it had 10 years ago. Elise's breath trembled. Her hand reached instinctively toward the second dog tag beneath her uniform. The forest held its breath with her. And for the first time since she stepped onto the ridge, Elise felt not fear, but recognition. Like a familiar voice, whispering from behind the veil of memory. A voice that once told her not to come back for him. A voice she had failed to obey. She whispered into the stillness, barely audible. "Is that you?" Why did the shadow freeze the moment her voice broke through the trees? Elise didn't move, couldn't. Her pulse hammered against her ribs so violently she thought her chest might give way. Mara stood beside her, rifle raised, breath sharp and steady, but her eyes flicked between the trees and Elise, realizing something deeper was happening, something she didn't yet understand. The forest waited. Even the wind held itself perfectly still. Elise stepped forward once, boots pressing softly into the moss-covered ground. "If you're who I think you are," her voice trembled, bare, stripped of rank and training, "show yourself." Nothing. A full, suffocating silence. Then a crunch, a bootstep, deliberate, controlled. Mara's grip tightened. Elise moved back. "No. Are you insane? We don't know who." "I do." Mara froze at the certainty in her voice. Another step echoed through the ridge. The shadow shifted. A figure emerged between two pine trunks, not fully visible, just an outline, broad shoulders, a hood, a posture that struck Elise like a blow to the gut. She knew that posture. She knew the shape of it, the way she knew the shape of her own fear. Her fingers curled against her thigh, nails digging through the fabric. "It can't be," she whispered. But the figure didn't approach, didn't speak, didn't run. Just watched her, as if waiting for something she wasn't ready to give. "Elise," Mara murmured, voice low, "you need to step away, now." She shook her head once. "I can't, not this time." Mara looked at her with something between confusion and concern. "You're acting like you know him." Elise swallowed hard. "I do." The words scraped out, raw and painful. 10 years of nightmares pulled tight inside her chest. Mara's jaw dropped. "But your report said." "I know what the report said." Elise's voice cracked like breaking glass. "I know." A ghost of movement, the figure shifted slightly, as if responding to her pain. His head tilted, the faintest sign of familiarity. "Elise," Mara hissed, "this could be a trap. Every part of this ridge is a trap." "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant," Elise said softly, "but this is different." Mara's shoulders stiffened. If he's alive, why the hell hasn't he identified himself? Why hasn't he called out? Why? Because he doesn't trust what he sees. The realization hit her like a wave, heavy, cold, merciless. Because he doesn't know if I'm real. Her voice went thin, almost a whisper. Because he watched me die once, and I watched him. The figure flinched, a small, unmistakable reaction. Mara's eyes widened. "Who is he?" Elise didn't answer. Not out loud. Her throat locked around the name, refusing to release it. The figure stepped back into the shadows. "No," Elise surged forward instinctively. Mara grabbed her arm hard. "Elise, stop. He's leaving. We can track him." "You don't understand." Elise's voice broke open. "If we lose him now, we won't find him again." Something snapped inside her, a decade of regret, wrapped around a single impossible moment. The figure turned, paused, and then a burst of static exploded in Elise's comms. The colonel's voice barked through it, urgent, loud. "Alpha Team, come in. We have movement near the central ridge. Multiple signatures approaching your position. Possible hostiles, 2 squads closing fast." Mara cursed under her breath. "We've been compromised." Of course they had. The shadow in the trees disappeared instantly, not running, not stumbling, slipping away with the same controlled silence Elise remembered. Wait, she lunged toward the trees. Mara yanked her back. We need to move now. No, I have to. Elise, if we die here, the mission dies with us. The forest erupted with distant gunfire, sharp cracks echoing across the ridge. The colonel's voice thundered in their ears. Alpha Team, fall back. Regroup with Echo immediately. Mara didn't wait. She grabbed Elise's vest and dragged her back as branches snapped behind them, and silhouettes began sweeping through the trees. Elise stumbled but kept her eyes locked on the place where the shadow had been seconds ago. Her heart fractured, torn between mission and memory, survival and truth. Move, Mara shouted. Elise finally ran. Leaves exploded under their boots. Bark splintered beside them as rounds struck the trees. The air filled with the sharp, metallic scent of gunfire. Elise moved by instinct, ducking, weaving, hearing Mara's breathing beside her, hearing her own heartbeat drowning everything else. But beneath the chaos, another sound lingered. A ghost of footsteps matching hers. Like someone running parallel in the shadows. Not helping. Not interfering. Just watching. Just close enough to follow. They broke through the tree line and skidded down the ridge, nearly losing footing on loose rock. At the base, the colonel and the Echo team were set behind partial cover, weapons raised. Contact north, the colonel shouted. Keep them pinned. Mara and Elise dove behind a fallen log. Mara's chest heaved. We almost died up there. Elise didn't speak. Her mind replayed the silhouette. The posture. The dog tag. That impossible familiarity. Mara caught her staring at the ridge. Who was he? Elise didn't look away. Someone I lost. Lost like killed. No, her voice trembled. Lost as in I left him behind. Mara frowned. Elise, is he dangerous? I don't know. Is he alive? Elise shut her eyes tightly. I don't know that either. But you think it's him? Elise nodded, breath shaking. And if it is? Mara asked gently. Elise finally answered, voice barely audible. Then everything I believed for the last 10 years is wrong. Gunfire thickened around them. Echo team returned fire. The colonel shouted orders, but Elise heard none of it, not fully, because her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere 10 years ago. Somewhere in the fire and smoke and screams. Somewhere with him. She felt Mara's hand on her shoulder. Elise, look at me. She did. For the rest of this mission, Mara said firmly, you don't face anything alone, not again. Elise swallowed hard. I know you think you left him behind, Mara whispered, but you're here now, you can do this. Elise nodded slowly, trying to breathe past the pain. The colonel crouched beside them. We need to relocate, they'll flank us at this rate. Mara looked to Elise, waiting. But Elise was still staring at the ridge, at the shadow she couldn't unsee. The colonel followed her gaze. Did something happen up there? Mara answered quickly. We saw movement, possibly a scout, nothing we couldn't handle. Elise exhaled, understanding Mara's choice. The colonel nodded slowly. We'll regroup a quarter-mile south, move in 2-minute intervals. The team prepared to shift. Elise rose to her feet, but her eyes drifted once more to the tree line. Her fingers brushed the second dog tag beneath her uniform. She whispered to herself, or maybe to someone listening. If you're alive, I'm not leaving without you this time. The wind moved through the ridge. Soft. Cold. Almost like an answer. But the truth was far from gentle. Because someone had waited 10 years to reveal themselves. And they hadn't saved her. They hadn't called out. They had watched her walk into danger. As if testing whether she deserved to survive this time. What made the forest feel like it was closing in on them as they moved? Elise walked with her rifle lowered but ready, boots pressing carefully into the uneven ground as Alpha and Echo split into staggered intervals. The team's breath formed small clouds in the cool air, each exhale swallowed quickly by the ridge's silence. The enemy gunfire had faded, but not the tension left behind. It lingered like smoke, like memory. Mara walked beside her, eyes scanning every shadow. They were probing us, she murmured, testing movement, testing numbers. Or testing me, Elise whispered. Mara glanced over. You still think it was him? Elise didn't answer. Because thinking wasn't the hard part, feeling was. She felt him in her bones, like an old injury flaring up exactly where the wound had never healed. She felt him in the way the trees shifted, in the way silence changed shape around her, in every impossible detail that logic rejected but memory clung to. They reached a narrow ravine where Echo Team had set temporary cover. The colonel crouched behind a boulder, checking a tablet that displayed updated drone footage. His brow furrowed. Movement dispersed. They're falling back into the ridge's interior. Mara knelt beside him. They didn't pursue. No, he tapped the screen. They retreated as soon as Alpha disengaged. Elise froze. Mara caught it instantly. What? Elise stepped closer, voice low. They weren't trying to pin us. They were trying to separate us. The colonel looked up sharply. Separate who? Elise scanned the tree line again, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. It wasn't a full attack, just pressure, just enough to scatter us to see where I'd go. The colonel stared at her, something dawning behind his eyes. You think they were targeting you? Elise didn't speak. Her silence was answer enough. The colonel exhaled. Tell me who you think you saw. Elise kept her gaze fixed on the dark tree line. I'm not sure what I saw. But you know who, he pressed. Mara placed a hand on Elise's shoulder, grounding her. You don't have to tell him yet. This stunned the colonel. Tell me what, Sergeant. Mara's voice stayed calm. There's something personal happening here, something she'll share when she's ready. The colonel stepped back, jaw tightening, but he didn't push. He knew better than to force an open wound before it stopped bleeding. Fine, he said finally, but whatever's happening, it can't jeopardize the mission. Elise spoke quietly. It won't, not if we move carefully. The colonel nodded once. We relocate again, ridge interior deeper. A murmur rippled through the team. The interior was known for only two things: hostile advantage and no escape routes. Mara stood. We'll go first, clear the way. The colonel agreed. Take 3 with you. But Elise shook her head. 2, just 2. Mara frowned. Why? Because large groups make noise. Noise gets watched. The colonel studied her for a long moment. You're sure? Elise nodded. I know this terrain. He didn't argue. Mara stepped beside Elise. All right, just the 2 of us. They moved out again, leaving the larger team to follow at controlled distance. The forest thickened. Light thinned. The canopy swallowed the sky above them. Moss-coated fallen branches, absorbing sound like the earth didn't want their presence announced. Mara whispered, What happened 10 years ago? I don't need details, just something. Elise walked slowly, eyes tracing shapes between trunks. We were 7 on that mission. That much I know. 6 came back, technically. Mara's step slowed, and the 7th. Elise's stomach twisted. He was our recon lead, smart, patient, quiet. He understood the ridge better than anyone. And you were close to him. Mara didn't phrase it like a question. Elise didn't deny it. Closer than I should have allowed myself to be. Mara hesitated. What happened to him? Elise stopped walking. The forest around them hummed with stillness, heavy and listening. We were ambushed, Elise said softly. Explosives under the soil, hidden pressure triggers. He took the brunt of it. Mara swallowed. He died. Elise closed her eyes tight. He told me not to come back for him, but I did. I searched for hours through smoke and debris and broken stone. I found blood. I found torn gear, but no body. Mara's expression softened. Maybe the blast. No, Elise shook her head. I know what a body looks like after a blast. There should have been something. Mara's voice dipped. So you think he was taken? Elise whispered. I never stopped thinking it. And now? Elise looked deeper into the ridge. Now I think he survived. Mara didn't argue, didn't rationalize, didn't dismiss. She just nodded once, accepting the impossible because she saw how truth looked in Elise's eyes. Suddenly, a shift in the air. Elise tensed. Mara raised her rifle. Leaves rustled overhead. A faint thud. Then nothing. Elise scanned the branches. We're not alone. Mara whispered, where? Everywhere. Elise took a slow step forward. The forest didn't move. But something changed. A glint. Metal. Elise crouched and reached into the underbrush, pulling out another object. Mara leaned in, expecting ammunition or gear or debris. But Elise's breath hitched painfully. A compass. Black rusted at the hinge. Cracked glass. She held it gently, like fragile bone. Mara frowned. Why does that look? It's his. Elise's voice was a tremor. He carried this on every mission. He never went anywhere without it. I gave it to him after training. Mara whispered, Elise. Elise turned it over. Scratched initials carved faintly into the metal. The initials she feared she'd never see again. Her eyes burned not with tears but with disbelief, hope, pain. She whispered, barely breathing. He's marking a trail. Mara scanned the woods nervously. For us. No, Elise shook her head slowly. For me. Before Mara could respond, 3 soft taps echoed from the deeper forest. Tap, tap, tap. A rhythm. A signal. A pattern Elise had heard 1,000 times during night recon drills with him. Her pulse stopped. Mara whispered, what is that? Elise's eyes widened. It's him. Another 3 taps. Fainter now. Farther. Leading them. Calling her. Mara grasped Elise's arm. This could be a trap. It doesn't matter. Elise. I have to follow it. Elise, wait. I have to. Her voice cracked open with a decade of guilt. She stepped forward. 1 step. 2. Everything inside her pulling toward the sound like gravity. Mara cursed under her breath. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Elise nodded once, grateful and terrified all at once. They moved deeper into the ridge, following the faint taps echoing like heartbeat pulses. Tap, tap, tap. Fatting each time, drawing them into the heart of Hollow Ridge. Elise whispered, voice trembling and hopeful. If it's really you, please don't disappear again. But the ridge didn't answer. Only the tapping did, leading them toward the truth, and toward a reunion. That might break her even more than the loss did. What made the tapping suddenly stop just when they were close enough to feel its pull? Elise halted mid-step, breath catching in her throat as the forest swallowed the sound. No echo, no movement, no rhythm drawing her deeper, just silence thick, dense, almost sentient. Mara froze a half-step behind her, rifle raised, chest rising and falling with careful breaths. Elise, why did it stop? Mara whispered. Elise didn't answer. She couldn't. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, louder than the forest ever dared to be. The tapping had been a guide, a message, a promise, and now it had vanished deliberately, intentionally, like hands slipping away right before contact. Mara stepped closer, eyes scanning the dense brush. We shouldn't be here. This is the interior. No satellite coverage. no clean lines of retreat. "I know," Elise murmured. Even so, her feet kept pulling forward, toward the place where the tapping had last echoed. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. "Elise," Mara hissed, gripping her arm, "stop." But Elise shook free gently, eyes fixed on the trees ahead. "He's close, I feel it." Mara sighed, frustrated but not angry. "Feeling isn't intel." "No," Elise whispered, "but it's memory." She stepped into a narrow passage between tall pines. Sunlight barely filtered through the canopy above, leaving only fractured beams that caught on drifting dust. It looked like a place kept secret by the earth itself. Mara followed reluctantly. The ridge narrowed into a basin-like hollow, curved rock walls, old-growth trees arching like guardians. The air was colder here, the ground softer. Elise recognized the formation instantly. Her breath faltered. "This is where we set camp," she whispered, "before everything went wrong." Mara looked around. "This exact spot." Elise nodded. "That stump over there was where we cooked. That rock was where he sat to chart routes. That tree over there." She stopped, because something glinted at the base of that tree. Mara saw it too. "Stay behind me." She approached carefully, sweeping the area with her rifle, then crouched beside the object. "It's a pouch." Elise's knees nearly gave out. She knew that pouch. She had stitched the corner of it during a winter op when the fabric tore. "Give it to me," she whispered. Mara hesitated, then handed it over with surprising gentleness. Elise opened the flap slowly. Inside was a single item. A strip of worn cloth, dark, frayed, and torn. Mara frowned. "What is it?" Elise didn't speak. She lifted it with trembling fingers, holding it up to the faint light. It was part of the sleeve from his uniform. She recognized the stitching, the faded number, the tear she had helped bandage days before the mission went wrong. Her breath shuddered. "It's..." Something snapped. A twig. Soft, deliberate. Mara swung around instantly, rifle raised. Contact. Elise didn't move. She just stared into the shadows ahead because she felt it. Felt him. Felt presence, familiar and haunting and impossibly alive. A silhouette stepped into view. Not approaching. Not threatening. Just standing. Watching. Mara whispered fiercely, "Elise, tell me that's who you think it is." Elise couldn't even blink. The figure was half hidden in shadow, hood low, posture rigid, but the stance, the height, the angle of the shoulders. It was him. Or it was someone wearing his shape. "Elise," Mara pressed. Her voice broke. "I think it's him." The figure didn't move. Didn't raise a weapon. Didn't speak. Just stood there, breathing slow, controlled, visible only by the faint rise and fall of the chest. "Elise," Mara warned softly, "what if it is?" "It is," Elise whispered, stepping forward. Mara grabbed her arm. "Elise." "Elise, come in," the colonel's voice blasted through their comms. "We lost your trackers, report status, now." They ignored it. "Elise," he repeated, "we have new intel. The enemy is running coordinated flanks. Pull back immediately." Mara cursed under her breath. "If this is a trap." "It's not," Elise said, voice trembling with a conviction she couldn't justify. Another step. The figure shifted, barely noticeable, but Elise caught it, the way someone caught the breath of a memory. She lifted her hand slowly. "It's me," she whispered. "It's Elise." The figure stiffened. Mara's breath hitched. He heard that. Elise took another step, tears burning at the edges of her vision. "I came back. I'm here." The figure inhaled sharply, a sound that felt like a wound tearing open. Then, something whistled through the air. A blur. Mara reacted instantly, shoving Elise down. "Sniper." A round slammed into the tree behind them, splintering bark. Elise hit the ground hard, air bursting from her lungs. Another shot cracked, and the figure in the shadows vanished. Mara, Elise scrambled up. But Mara was already pulling her by the vest, dragging her into cover behind a fallen log. "We're compromised. Sniper on the ridge. Move." No, he was right there. Elise, we're dead if we stay. She didn't want to leave. Every instinct screamed to chase him, to run after the shadow she had waited a decade to see. But a third shot cracked past, burying into the dirt near her knee. Mara grabbed her face, forcing eye contact. "Listen to me. He ran because they're tracking him too. If you stay, you'll get him killed." Elise froze. Those words felt like a stab, but a truthful one. Her heart hammered. Her lungs burned. But she nodded, because she knew Mara was right. They moved quickly, weaving between fallen trunks and thick brush as more shots peppered the clearing. Elise kept glancing back, praying for even a glimpse of that silhouette, but nothing stirred except branches quivering from the gunfire. The colonel's voice thundered again, distorted by static. "Alpha Team, respond immediately." Mara hit her comms. "Moving, ambushed by sniper, no visuals, falling back to last route." "Understood. Echo Team is en route to your position." They pushed deeper into the brush, the terrain sloping downward into a narrow channel between two rock walls. Elise stumbled slightly, hands still gripping the torn cloth from the pouch. Mara steadied her. "You okay?" "No," Elise whispered truthfully, "but I can move." They kept going. Branches whipped past them, the forest blurred. Elise's head spun with unanswered questions. Why did he appear? Why didn't he approach? Why leave the compass, the dog tag, the pouch? And why did he run the moment shots rang out? Because Mara was right. He wasn't hunting them. He was being hunted. She clutched the fragment of his uniform so tightly, it nearly tore apart in her fist. Mara glanced at it. "Elise, this is proof he survived." Elise nodded, unable to speak. "But there's something else," Mara said quietly. "Something I need you to stay open to." Elise looked up, eyes raw. "What?" Mara hesitated, then said the one possibility Elise hadn't dared consider. "What if he's not running from them, but from us?" The forest swallowed the words whole. Elise's breath faltered, because it was a question she wasn't ready to face. Not yet. What truth hides in the silence that follows a gunfire escape? Elise moved through the narrowing ravine with her pulse pounding, her senses sharpened to a painful edge. The trees seemed to lean inward, crowding the path, pressing her forward like a hand against her spine. Mara led the way, checking corners, scanning above, every movement precise and controlled. But Elise's mind was far from controlled. Her thoughts were racing ahead of her feet. Why did he run? Why appear at all if he was going to disappear again? Why leave pieces of himself like breadcrumbs? The cloth strip in her hand felt heavier than gear, heavier than the guilt she'd carried for 10 years. It was real. It was warm from her grip, proof that he was alive or at least had been recently. They reached the end of the ravine where the terrain opened into a sloping field of rock and twisted shrubs. Echo Team was moving toward them, weapons raised, scanning the tree line for movement. The colonel approached first, face hard, worry masked under authority. "Report," he demanded. Mara answered, "Sniper ambush, no clear visuals, one figure at distance." "It was him," Elise whispered. The colonel turned sharply. "Who?" "Elise," Mara warned gently. But Elise couldn't swallow it anymore. Not after 10 years of silence. Not after seeing him standing just meters away. "I saw my missing team member," she said quietly. "The one declared KIA 10 years ago. The one whose body we never recovered." The colonel's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, then he masked it. "That's not possible." He left these, Elise said, showing the torn cloth, the compass tucked in her vest. These were his. The colonel swallowed. You're certain? Yes. Silence fell over the group, heavy, uncomfortable, fragile. Mara finally spoke. We're dealing with someone who knows this terrain better than any of us. Someone who's been here for years. Someone avoiding both us and the hostile groups. The colonel scrubbed a hand across his jaw. If what you're saying is true, he exhaled, then there's more happening here than command told us. Elise's voice darkened. Then tell us what you know. He met her stare evenly. I know this ridge was flagged years ago for unsanctioned activity. Classified. I know a forward operations post was built without record of its purpose. And I know someone kept placing soil sensors long after the project shut down. Mara frowned. Someone from our side. The colonel nodded once. Elise felt a cold truth settling inside her. Her teammate wasn't just lost. He had been kept, hidden, or used. Her stomach twisted. Someone took him. The colonel didn't deny it. Elise stepped closer, anger rising through her grief. You knew something was wrong here, and you sent us anyway. I sent you, he corrected gently, because you're the only one who could feel your way through this place. You're the only one he might approach. Elise stared at him, shock rippling through her. You wanted him to find us. I wanted answers, he admitted, and I thought you deserved the truth. She shook her head, bitterness rising. Truth isn't owed, it's earned. He nodded, accepting that without argument. Another burst of gunfire erupted deeper in the woods, but distant, traveling away from them. Mara turned. He's being pushed. Elise's chest tightened. The colonel tapped his radio. Alpha, Echo, defensive posture, hold position. Then he looked at Elise again. You know I can't authorize a chase right now. She stepped forward, eyes sharp as a blade. I'm not asking you to. Elise, I'm telling you I'm going. Mara stepped between them. Then I'm going with her. The colonel's jaw tightened. If you pursue, you break protocol, you leave the mission. Mara didn't blink. Then write me up when I get back. Elise looked at both of them. He's alone out there, hunted by people who know these hills. If I don't follow now, we'll never find him again. The colonel stared at her for a long, tense moment. Then, with a reluctant exhale, he said quietly, Go. Mara grabbed Elise's arm, pulling her toward the tree line. Moving. Elise followed, breath shaking, heart pounding. They slipped into the brush, moving fast but silent, following the faint echoes of conflict ahead. Branches snapped. Distant voices carried. A low echo of pain or warning rolled between the trunks. They crept toward the sound, crouching behind a boulder. Below them, in a shallow dip between rocks, they saw movement. 3 hostile fighters, and one figure cornered behind a fallen log. Elise's lungs seized. It was him. Even from this angle, angled shoulders, careful breathing, movements quiet and efficient, she knew. He moved the same. He braced the same. He existed the same. Mara whispered, That's him. Elise nodded, throat tight. The fighters moved in, whispering to each other, rifles raised. The figure remained hidden, not firing, not moving recklessly. He was surviving. He had been surviving for a decade. Elise, Mara murmured, if we take the shot, we expose our position. If we don't. He dies, Elise whispered. She steadied her breathing. She aimed. Mara mirrored her movement. 3 shots. Precise. Silent. Clean. 2 enemies dropped instantly. The third turned, Elise fired again. The shot echoed through the trees. The ridge held its breath. The figure behind the log didn't move for a long, agonizing moment. Elise lowered her weapon slightly, terrified of what she'd see. Then slowly he rose, pushing himself up from behind cover. Elise's chest collapsed around her heartbeat. Because it was him. Gaunt, worn, scarred, but unmistakably him. He lowered his hood. Brown hair, longer now, eyes sunken but bright, a face she had memorized long before Hollow Ridge took him away. He stared at her, breathing shallow, one hand braced against the fallen log. "Elise," Mara whispered, awestruck, "he's alive." Elise stepped forward. "Hey," she whispered, voice breaking, "it's me." He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared at her like she was a hallucination he'd dreamed so many times he didn't trust the real thing. She took another step. "I came back for you." He swallowed, a subtle, painful motion, and whispered hoarsely, "You shouldn't have." Her chest split open. His voice after 10 years. She stepped closer, tears building. "I left you once, I won't leave again." His eyes softened with something indescribable, grief, relief, disbelief. But he stepped back one pace, shaking his head like a man fighting a truth he wanted but feared. "They're coming," he rasped. "You shouldn't be here." "We're staying," she said fiercely. He looked at her, tired, broken, afraid for her, and whispered, "They made me stay." Elise froze. Mara stiffened. "What does that mean?" He looked at Elise again, sorrow carving his face. "They didn't let me die." Before Elise could ask, footsteps thundered in the trees. Many. Close. A force much larger than before. Mara grabbed Elise. "We need to move." He stepped back into the shadows, torn between staying and running. "Elise," he whispered, voice cracking, "please." She reached out. He reached back. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. Another burst of gunfire exploded. He vanished into the trees like smoke. "No," Elise surged forward. Mara caught her. "Elise, stop, we'll lose him." Elise collapsed to her knees, pain ripping through her. Because he was alive. And running. And terrified. And still trapped in the place she left him. Mara knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. "We'll find him, we will." Elise pressed a shaking hand against the ground where he had stood seconds ago. Tears finally broke free. The ridge watched quietly. Cold. Knowing. Mara whispered softly, "He survived because of you." Elise shook her head. "No, he survived without me." Mara's voice softened. "Then you'll give him the ending he deserved." Elise rose, voice steady, broken, powerful. "I will." She stared into the ridge where he disappeared and whispered, "I'm not done, not until he's free." The wind moved gently through the trees, as if carrying her promise forward, as if delivering it to the man still running in the shadows, as if reminding her of a truth she had forgotten. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And Elise was ready to act for him, for herself, for the decade they had both lost. The ridge had taken enough. It would not take him again. Not while she still had breath. Not while she still had strength. Not while she still had love left to give.